The right of the people to be secure in their persons, house, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures will not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Tim Kimble in Ulterior Facade is based on a true story. My true story. I quit smoking marijuana for 8 months while composing the manuscript rough draft in early 2016. I rendered a compilation of the first 13 chapters at a farmhouse outside Garden City, Kansas, before becoming distracted. It was nearly 7 years later, during the last quarter of 2022, that I was able to complete the final 6 chapters, only because I was on the lam, homeless, and living out of a storage unit. The majority of the stories and plot direction were assembled in the shadow of America's mountain. The proprietary concept ideas, an original writing style in relation to the design outline and hidden messages, continues precisely where Tim Kimble in Manifest Destiny left off. Here is the novella overview. Kansas City is the return gritty backdrop to the storyline flanked by the artificial municipalities of Deerfield Hills and Morgantown, Kansas. Much of the story is told third person. All of the first-person accounts are italicized and from a different time subsequently reminisced by Kimble. The introduction was from a journal entry originally written in March 2001, and other than names being altered and a few grammatical corrections, it's a direct quote from the record, and it captures the uncertainty of being incarcerated. The dedication of my second book is to the most lifelong involved and loving granny I could have dreamed of. Documentation has been carefully collected and integrated into the storyline to bolster the facts sounding too outlandish alone. Each piece is categorized and credited throughout. Chapter titles on the fives integrate idioms with character names. As the Crow Flies and Get Away Scot-Free discloses more trusted confidants escaping straight line to avoid paying the piper, and both will get away scot-free from the suck of the Metropolitan, just as the heat from law enforcement was closing in. May See No Evil examines how rarely women possess the inner strength to summon the sheer wicked wherewithal necessary to conquer a facilitated transaction of deceit. Kimble pauses to narrate relevant experiences from his pre-divorce childhood in relating to the world spiraling out of control around him. Chapter 1, Broadmoor, page 4. I deliberate back 16 years, discovering plausible deniability as a 5-year-old devious child, occupying my attention by popping various balloons staged for my little brother Davis's birthday party in the 7th Shire Project. My parents ran across the street to retrieve gifts stockpiled from Grandma and Grandpa at Mama Pat's house. Dad stepped inside the living room, glancing at the residual carnage, as Mom lunged towards me, shouting over the blaring television. She dug her fingernails into my upper arm skin, pointing at the colorful array of broken balloon pieces scattered about. I drastically sought out an excuse, and my spontaneous utterance was to blame the cat. The pure disbelief washed over both their faces. But as if cued right on time, the cat pounced on a little red balloon, exploding their case for punishment. I swiftly cultured my thought process. To interpret, there was always more than one explanation for every situation. The section introduction for Chapter 12, Reign of the Knights. The defense raised an objection in regard to violations of the due process of the law. The trial and error case bearing false witness testimony by Trooper Dix was handily impeached under oath. He was laughed out of court with evidence anyone could be the judge of. Ignacio sustained his seal of approval on a federal guilty plea, and was not a prisoner of his own conscience. Chapter 12, Reign of the Knights. Excerpt pages 264 through 267. Investigating Trooper Jim Dick's narrative report. Affiant stopped the vehicle and informed the driver for the reason for the stop. During my conversation with the driver, Affiant smelled a strong odor of marijuana coming from his person and inside the vehicle. Affiant had the driver exit the vehicle and continued to smell a strong odor of marijuana coming from his person. The driver had no driver's license and identified himself, according to the Highway Patrol incident report. Mr. Stevens sits listening intently to the trooper recount the story with the help of his narrative report. He is provided the opportunity to cross-examine and jumps on the validity for the traffic stop to begin with. Trooper Dix, where was the front axle's location of the defendant's vehicle at the moment the stoplight changed from yellow to red? He states, looking into the manila folder. Further, what was the speed of the defendant's vehicle as it was entering the intersection? The trooper shrugs his shoulders and discounts the line of questioning. I observed the vehicle perform an illegal operation, and I executed a traffic stop well within my obligations to the oath of upholding the law, he comments. I don't have a play-by-play of the defendant's exact locality and speed. Mr. Stevens introduces a short video clip of the traffic cameras from the date and time of the instance into evidence. I submit that my client was traveling at a speed of 30 miles an hour, he proves. The speed limit for this particular stretch of road is 40 miles an hour. He veers to the actual Kansas statute as defined by the state for running a red light. The vehicle in question clearly enters the intersection a second and a half before the traffic light changes to red, he smiles. The arbitrator reverts to the trooper to continue the hearing with his testimony. Trooper Dix takes a quick drink of water while he refers to the narrative report from the evening in question to refer his recollection. Investigating Trooper Jim Dix, narrative report. Affiant smelled the odor of marijuana on Mr. Kimble's person, and he had red, bloodshot, and watery eyes. He also exhibited a brown discoloration and heat blisters on his tongue, which is consistent with someone under the influence of marijuana. During the search of his vehicle, Affiant found a small amount of marijuana on the driver's side floorboard of the vehicle, according to the Highway Patrol incident report. The narrative report continues. Affiant collected a small amount of marijuana, but there were marijuana leaves and seeds throughout the entire car's floorboard and between the seats. The vehicle continued to have a strong odor of both burnt and fresh marijuana. A Metropolitan Sheriff Canine unit was also called to conduct a dog sniff on the vehicle, and the result was positive, the incident report states. Mr. Stevens draws a deep breath with a half smile across his face. Trooper Dix, is it possible that the 20-mile-an-hour wind gusts and dropping temperatures could cause one's eyes to become watery? He utters. Is it possible the flying dust from the surrounding fields could cause bloodshot eyes? The trooper sits back in his seat and dismisses the defense's claim with a shake of his head. Mr. Stevens then asks if a person that smokes cigarettes have the same discoloration and heat blisters present on their tongue. Marijuana burns at a much higher temperature than tobacco, the trooper retorts. Mr. Stevens chuckles and inquires as to what the temperature difference is. The figures are set forth in the training book, he sidesteps. Mr. Stevens glances towards the arbitrator, sliding the training handbook in front of him. Why is it you only collected a small amount of marijuana, but left marijuana leaves and seeds on the floorboard? He again focuses on procedure. Your testimony also claims the car had a strong odor of burnt marijuana. Did you locate paraphernalia inside the vehicle? The trooper asserts the narrative report has a misprint. He collected all the evidence from the vehicle, but did not find rolling papers or a smoking utensil. Mr. Stevens quickly asks if the amount of marijuana collected was enough to roll a joint with. How would I know? The trooper replies. Mr. Stevens leans back in his chair and folds his arms over his stomach. You claim to be a specially trained agent in the detection and identification of marijuana, he begins. I'd think you'd know what amount is required to roll a joint with. You also entered a statement into evidence to identify the smell of burnt marijuana, but you were unable to locate how the alleged marijuana was being smoked. Investigating Trooper Jim Dick's narrative report. Affiant placed Mr. Kimble under arrest for felony possession of marijuana and transported him to the county jail. At the jail, Affiant informed Mr. Kimble of both written and oral implied consent advisories. Affiant asked him if he would submit to both a breath and urine test, and he refused the tests and refused to answer any questions after he was advised of his Miranda rights, according to the Highway Patrol incident report.